It's officially halfway through the year, and I have read 31 books so far and want to talk about them because I always want to talk about books. So today I'm going to be answering the questions in the mid-year book freakout tag, which is something that I do every year in my journal at the very least. Last year was a really stellar reading year for me, but unfortunately this year I've had less wins, and it's even though it's more consistent with like a normal reading year for me, I'm a little devastated that I'm not getting more 5 stars. So I kind of want to talk about some of the books that I read last year as part of this tag, and just have it be one long continuous reading year. By the way, this is Baby. He's going to be my assistant with my microphone today. The best book I've read so far in 2026. This is actually my only 5 star so far this year. That was something that I hadn't read before. It was Paradise by Fernanda Melchor. She is a Mexican writer who I honestly don't have the words for, because if you've ever read one of her books, you know how intense it is. Paradise follows 2 teenage boys in this luxury housing complex, and they kind of hatch a scheme that's kind of horrific, to say the least. I don't want to say too much because it is only like 118 pages, but I swear to you, it feels simultaneously so much longer than that and also over in the blink of an eye. Paradise was one of the first books that I read at the start of the year because her other book, Hurricane Season, was actually my final book of the year. We'll get to that later. And I really adored it. Also by her, I have This Is Not Miami. This is a nonfiction collection of stories, actually. I trust Fernanda to just deliver absolute devastation with the most dizzying, beautiful, winding sentences you could ever imagine. The back of the book actually has a blurb by another author who I will get to later, but I found her description of the writing in this and in Hurricane Season and in Paradise to be just very accurate, better than I could ever put it in my own words. So Fernanda Melchor has a powerful voice, and by powerful, I mean unsparing, devastating, the voice of someone who writes with rage and has the skill to put it off, and I cannot emphasize that enough. The best sequel that I've read so far this year, and to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that I even had an answer for this question because I don't normally reach for series, but it would have to be the latest Finlay Donovan book. That's Finlay Donovan Crosses the Line. Now, I can't tell you too much about this because this is like the 6th or 7th or something like that book in this series, but the series overall follows a struggling crime romantic suspense author who gets involved in a hitman scheme, let's say, and things just kind of like spiral from there. It's so much fun, and despite the fact that it is a mystery, which is not usually my favorite, I usually prefer a thriller. I think the characters in this series are just so utterly charming and fun to read about and to return to that I know I'm going to have a good time every single time I pick one of these books up. And the last couple books, this one and I think the one before this, have really kind of revived my love for the series. Not that I was losing it necessarily, but I guess things were kind of feeling okay rather than like a solid, enjoyable read for me. And these past ones have been solid, enjoyable reads. My other answer for this question would have to be The Homewrecker by Sarah Kate. This is a romance, erotica, smutty. I don't know how you would describe it. I guess you could put it as romance, but it's like quite explicit, open door. So I might put it as like smutty romance, erotica, whatever. So it's a series of romance stories that follow sort of the men in like one family in particular and the people that they fall in love with throughout the years. The Homewrecker in particular follows 3 people rather than 2. It's a why choose romance, and it's a male, female, male romance. I don't know if there's a right way to list that order. But the point is that I love bi men. And that's what this novel is giving me. It's a lot of fun, and I'd like to continue the series, but I cannot for the life of me find the final book at the library, which is where I'm getting majority of my books. So eventually, but not yet. My most disappointing read of the year so far is thankfully not sharing this space with a lot of other books, but it is discouraging to have run into a book that I was really having higher expectations for, and it fell flat. That would be Why Does Everybody Hate Me? A Guide to Living and Loving with Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria by Alex Partridge. As the title suggests, this book is about living with RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. By the way, that took me about 5 tries to say without stumbling. which is common in neurodivergent people, particularly ADHD, I believe. Basically, the really painful phenomenon of rejection and why it's such a heightened emotion for those of us who experience it, why it's not just us being like sensitive, quote unquote, or, trying to make sense of why these reactions are so strong and where they come from. The very first thing that frustrated me is that the author puts this one data point down, which is not really cited in any way. Recall. I don't recall any citations in this book, which was another point that really bothered me. There is a number, 20,000, and it is brought up so many times. It felt like every page I was being reminded of this one data point that they wanted me to remember. And I was like, okay, I get it. I didn't love some of the advice in there. I felt like the perspective was quite limited to maybe one type of experience rather than multiple others. And so I found a lot of the advice quite silly, to say the least. I mean, there was one point in there that was like, you can maybe have your friends and family make a list of like things to compliment you with for when you're feeling like extra sensitive. Maybe you could get better at regulating your emotions. It just didn't feel right to me to have the advice be let other people do the work for you. I understand it's very difficult, and this is something that I have been trying to untangle over the past, my whole life really, but especially in the last 6 months or so, I've really been like diving into people pleasing tendencies, rejection sensitivity, things like that, regulating my emotions and trying to understand how to better respond to them instead of react to them. And I feel like this book was just not helpful if you're in that kind of boat. What I would suggest instead, that I also read pretty close to Why Does Everybody Hate Me, is Are You Mad at Me by Meg Josephson. This is more on the people-pleasing side, but I found that a lot of the advice from Are You Mad at Me could be used with rejection sensitivity as well. And I think it does a much better job of explaining why you are feeling the heightened emotions that come with rejection, or why it feels so intense and outright painful, physically painful sometimes, or most of the time, but also guides you in a much more gentle and less in your face way to being gentler with yourself in order to break free of these people-pleasing tendencies. Because nobody is really going to stop being a people pleaser because people have told them to stop. It's not that simple. I really liked that, well, first of all, there's citations, but it also gives reminders, action plans, just actionable steps. It just felt a lot more like it was something that I could take control of when I finished that book. I felt so good after thinking, okay, I'm going to have these things in mind. I feel like I can take some things moving forward. But Why Does Everybody Hate Me just had me incredibly frustrated from very early on in the book. So for that, it was my disappointment because I was very much looking forward to it. This is not going to stop me from trying more self-help-ish books. I've been reading a bit more nonfiction, I think, than usual. So if anybody has any suggestions for nonfic, especially if it's related to people-pleasing, OCD, ADHD, autism, would love to hear it. Thank you. My biggest surprise, on the other hand, was definitely Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. There's been a lot of talk about this book since it was announced, likely because it has to do with a 17-year-old who seduces her creative writing teacher. I didn't know a single thing about it beyond that because I felt like that premise alone was going to raise a lot of like knee-jerk reactions. So I wanted to be able to read the book myself and form my own opinions and thoughts and all of that to cross-reference with other people after I'd read it. Some books are just like that for me. If it's too buzzy, I'm just going to be going in with other people's expectations. I kind of at first thought that I might not like it just because I've seen a lot of people say that they hated it. It was awful, disgusting, whatever. I happened to see a bookish interview with Jeanette McCurdy, and she brought My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which we will be talking about again in a little bit. Things started to change after that. I thought to myself, wait a minute, based on this, the boldness of a title like I'm Glad My Mom Died, the voice that I saw in that first book in her memoir, and just what I know of her and the books that she likes to read, I thought maybe I should just like not look at what anybody's going to say and go into this as open as possible. This could be unhinged, weird, uncomfortable, exactly for me, because these are things that over the last year or so I've come to realize that I really, really adore in a book when it's done, in my opinion, correctly. And when I say correctly, I mean, correctly for me. But this book was it. I really think that literary interview set me up to have the right expectations going into Half His Age. I don't know if otherwise maybe I would have gone in expecting a more My Dark Vanessa sort of situation, which is another one of my favorite books. But I knew it would still have something to say about trauma, the things that affect us, and they would be, as I would say it, on the same highway, like driving to the same destination, but in different lanes. There were many parts that were deeply uncomfortable, and I was reading like this. I ended up enjoying it a lot, like way more than I thought I was going to based on other people's reactions. And I can't wait to see what other fiction she writes next, because it seems like we have the same taste. Sorry, baby, this is in your face. Skipping back to last year very quickly, I just wanted to give my answer for last year because it's kind of in line for this one. But I read Lolita last year. Lolita is another one of those books that I would see people talk about, and I just got the distinct impression that they actually hadn't read the book based on the depth of their comments versus the depth of the comments of people who had read the book. And so I thought, if I can stomach this, I would love to see what my opinion is. The writing, stunning. The story, heinous. But it wasn't explicit, which was maybe one of the biggest surprises that I had about that book. I knew the writing was going to be pretty stellar, but the explicitness being kind of non-existent was not something that I expected based on the way that people talk about it. Do you know what's going on in these scenes? Yes, but it wasn't as explicit and direct and in your face, unable to look away from, as, for example, Tampa by Lissa Nutting, which I also read last year and also loved, but I think it's one of those books that, I don't know if I can ever read more than once in my lifetime. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. But I think Half His Age, My Dark Vanessa, and Lolita and Tampa are all incredibly different because they're all incredibly different stories at their roots, despite having really similar themes. All of these books were great reads, in my opinion, and I just think it's interesting that they're all saying similar-ish things, but different perspectives of similar things. Something I love about all of these books is their reminder that there is no perfect victim. None. I think when people who have been harmed or abused act in ways that we as a collective don't agree is the right way to deal with trauma, the responses get pretty nasty and they're pretty discouraging to see, especially when I recall that this is all towards somebody who is sharing something traumatic, and the response to not liking the way that they handled it, or how they're feeling about it, or how they view it, their own story, the response to that is to add more trauma almost. I think a good clear-cut story of overcoming trauma and hardship and just awful things that have been done or that have happened to you in your life are very needed. And those books definitely have their place, but I am very happy to have these because I guess it just kind of feels like it aligns a bit more with my own experiences. I think My Dark Vanessa especially is one of those books that has really stuck with me for a lot of those reasons. A new favorite character is not something that I am always lucky enough to end the reading year with, but I was last year, and because I don't have one for this year yet, I'm just going to say it for last year. It's The Secret History, my favorite book, period. While I love every single awful, terrible character in this book, Bunny is my favorite, I think. Bunny's terrible, but I love that about him. Everyone in this book is kind of terrible, and I love that about them. It makes for an entertaining read. It makes for a spellbinding read. And Bunny just happens to be one of my favorites. Although every character in this book is kind of my favorite. Oh yeah, almost forgot to give a sort of synopsis. The OG Dark Academia book, essentially. This is following a young man who goes to college straight across the country and gets involved in this very tight-knit group of students who are studying ancient Greek. You find out literally the first sentence, so it's not a spoiler, that Bunny is dead, and you get to watch the story unfold leading up to it and the aftermath of that death. And it's my favorite book, and it's fucking fantastic, and I am going to put it away now because I will go on forever about it. Now, onto some feelings. A book that made me cry I have not encountered this year yet. In the meantime, I'm going to go with my answers for last year. One of them is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, which I brought up earlier. Not that it's necessarily a sad book. It does follow a character who is deeply, deeply depressed and just kind of like stewing in her depression. And she decides that she wants to sleep for 1 year straight. And that when that's over, she'll be good and done. And I was not in a great place last year. I'm not going to lie. I was not doing very well mentally. And My Year of Rest and Relaxation was super cathartic to read because I also was having so many days where I thought, why can't I just go to sleep and wake up in a year when this is over, or wake up in whatever amount of time it will take for this to be over, for things to be put together again and good again. Like I said earlier, having a book kind of see you back, if that doesn't sound weird, is very special to me, especially when it's an emotion or experience that I feel I'm desperately trying to get people to see or believe that I'm undergoing, but it gets brushed off instead. So to have all of these quotes within My Year of Rest and Relaxation that completely described the way it felt to be drowning in this utter despair, the moments waking up in between naps or bouts of sleep when you're really in the thick of it, they were just really accurate to me. It's definitely a bit of a more unhinged book, and the main character is quite unlikable because of her treatment of other people in her life due to the depression. She can't see beyond, basically. And besides the fact that I just really enjoy reading about unlikable characters when the story surrounding them or their personality is just very interesting, I was so unlikable last year too. Genuinely, I felt less alone because I would read some of these passages and know that she deep down does not mean to be such an asshole, but she kind of does, and she's letting her like mean thoughts to the surface because, you know, nothing else is holding back. Does she actually feel the way that she does? Deep down, probably not. No. When you're steeped in awfulness, it just seeps out of you too. And I just felt seen. Though I don't recall crying for this book, I'm sure it did at some point, or at least I got a little bit teary-eyed because I just needed somebody to be like, yeah. But my real answer, as in the book that like really made me cry, sob, I was even recounting it to my boyfriend, I would lose it all over again, is definitely Call Me by Your Name. I did not think I was going to be reading this book last year. I don't remember what made me decide to pick it up. But oh my God, it hurt. It hurt so much. It's basically a story of the main character's first love, but the depictions of that intensity, that obsession, that you cannot get this person out of your head, the way that it feels so like all encompassing, the little rituals that you might do that you think to yourself, okay, maybe I'll get to see this person if XYZ happens, then it's a good day for us. Then I'll confess. Then I'll, you know, all these like little things that you do, these little games that you play. And it took me all right back to my very first love. I didn't expect it to be honest with you. And I've never seen anybody put it into words as aptly as Andre Aciman did. I had also seen the movie a couple months prior, and I liked the movie, but I was not prepared for the book to break me apart. On the other hand, a book that made me happy was Summers at Castle Auburn by Sharon Chin. This is one of my rereads, so I knew it was going to do that for me. I don't know if I would say it made me happy necessarily, so much as it's a comfort read for me. This is a coming-of-age story set with the backdrop of a fantasy, light fantasy. There's definitely some fae. We're at a castle every summer, and watching this girl from the ages of 14 through I think like 19, 20 or something like that, as she is making sense of the world around her and the way that her perception of the world changes as she grows up, coming into her own opinions, figuring out how she feels about things, about injustices, about other people. It's a comfort read for me, and I knew I needed that because I was starting to get a little bit slumpy. So this is a book that definitely made me feel warm inside. And it actually perfectly leads me into the next book, which is a new release that I have not yet read but want to. The Secret World of Briar Rose by Cindy Pham. I'm cheating a little because I actually did start this the other day, but I'm only like 150 pages or so into it. Can you see how gorgeous the edges are? I don't want to take the dust jacket off because this is my personal copy and I'm not ready to get it like dirtied yet. So I am currently reading it from the library as well. To be honest, I think Cindy's super neat, so I would probably read anything that she put out anyways, but to have a sapphic fairy tale retelling that takes place in dreams and also deals with themes of depression, I'm very much looking forward to finishing that. As for the second half of the year, my most anticipated release is definitely the next book in the Ninth House series by Lee Bardugo. That is a dark academia fantasy series. The series follows a girl who is given the chance to start over at Yale after she's fleeing from a dangerous and mysterious past, hoping that this will be the chance that she can get away from it all, but she does get into more danger that she didn't expect to be getting into, and it gets a little paranormal. There's secret societies, there's demons, there's magic. I enjoy it so much, and I'm very much looking forward to the third book. I reread Ninth House and Hellbent last year, like right next to each other, in hopes that it would manifest the third book coming out much sooner. So I kind of feel like I made that happen. Ooh, let's move on to some favorites, like my new favorite author. I actually have two answers to this. One is obviously Fernanda Melchor. I think her writing is beautiful and brutal. I was recommended Hurricane Season by somebody who I was talking with about Mariana Enriquez, who's another one of my favorite authors, new favorite authors. Next answer. Her books also have this difficulty to them, this edge of brutality and discomfort that obviously will come with a horror. But it's not quite to the level of Hurricane Season. And so when I got the recommendation, this person said, trigger warning for basically everything. And I said, sure, the things that I'm looking out for in a book are never the things that people are warning for. This person was not kidding. They meant basically everything, because I was thinking, okay, that's kind of par for the course when you're recommending it alongside this author. But no, it was brutal. They meant it. Everything. There were some parts that were quite difficult to get through. What makes up both Hurricane Season and Paradise are these really long, winding paragraphs made up of like essentially one or two sentences. And that might sound daunting, and perhaps it would have been daunting for me if I was reading the physical copy and saw this one large chunk of text or wall of text in front of me. But I did read them both on ebook, and I was able to adjust the formatting to something that was easier on my eyes and attention span or lack thereof. And so I was able to get lost in a lot of those long, winding passages, and I think it's just fucking phenomenal. So because I've already cheated and given an author that I technically discovered at the very, very end of last year, I might as well just give my favorite new authors from last year as well, because they continue to live in my head rent-free. Of course, the aforementioned Mariana Enriquez. It would be incredibly silly if I didn't say Donna Tartt, because she wrote my favorite book like of all time. But I also read The Goldfinch last year and vastly enjoyed it. And I don't have any of her books currently yet, but I will get them on my shelves. Samantha Schweblin, another horror author, but she does like liminal, uneasy horror. I don't know. I just found the sweet spot for authors in the last year, I think. So as long as there is an unread Donna Tartt and Fernanda Melchor book on my TBR, there is a 5-star in my future. I'm so certain of it. Even if they end up being 4 stars, it's a 5-star experience. My most beautiful bought or acquired book this year is definitely this copy of East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I actually have a story about this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the answer. It would be Cindy's book for sure. This was a book that I was planning on buying anyway, because for longer books, I'd rather just have them and be able to take my time with them without worrying about renewal dates for the library. I was looking for like the Penguin Classic editions, just as long as they didn't have deckled edges. But this had to be mine. So I start looking for it, and I could not find it for less than like $150. The one time I was able to find it not in triple digits, it was maybe about $30 or $35. So I did put an alert out for it on the app that I use to buy and sell books. And within a couple days, somebody put this edition up for $4. Come on. How can this not be the winner? Okay, we definitely have to wrap things up. So goals that I have for the end of the year, reading goals. I want to read more classics. I was reading a lot more last year, but I think things have been slowing down, and it makes me a little bit sad because I have pretty much enjoyed everything that I've read, even when I didn't super enjoy it. I have yet to read a Jane Austen, and I would love to attempt that. Jane Eyre is another one that I would love to read because I just know it's like a favorite among so many people, and I think it could be a favorite for me too, but I won't know until I try, and I won't be able to try until I can get my head on straight. So if I'm able to do that, I see a lot more classics in my future. That's definitely a little bit more of my priority for the second half of the year if I can manage that. I read more translated books last year than I normally do just because it usually takes me a little bit more focus to kind of lock into a different writing style, a different form of storytelling. So I would like to read more translated books when I'm able to concentrate a little bit more. In general, whether or not it's a translated or more difficult book or whatever, I would like to read at least one more long book. I know that hopefully I will have finished East of Eden by the end of this year. I don't see why I wouldn't, but famous last words. I don't want this to be the only big book that I read this year. Our Share of Night was quite an accomplishment for me last year, and it's, how many pages is this? Close to 600, and it wasn't the shortest book that I read last year either. So I think as long as I remain open, I would like to do one more of at least 500 pages. That would be nice. And, of course, hit my reading goal, which is always 50 books because I know that I can always reach 50 books every year. So that's not necessarily going to be a problem. It's just that I would love to get to the point where I've passed the reading goal already because I just feel a little bit more free in the things that I'm picking up. That's it for my mid-year check-in, reading check-in, freakout. Yeah. Thanks for joining me and letting me yap about books for a while because that's all I do in this house. If you have any recommendations for me based on the things that I mentioned in this video, like loving and adoring, please let me know. And yeah, I will hopefully see you soon. Bye.